Great, bore da a chroeso, good morning and welcome to this hybrid meeting of Licensing and Gambling Acts Committee on Monday, the 17th of October 2022. Just to make you all aware that today's meeting will be recorded. Can you also please ensure that that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting? Would members, officers and attendees who are present in the chamber today please use their microphones when speaking? And when not speaking, can I ask that you ensure your microphone is switched to mute? If you have any questions, please raise your hand or electronic if attending virtually. So agenda item 2 to 5 is the previous minute. So agenda Item 2 to 5 of the circulated pack are previous minutes of the Licensing and Gambling Acts Committee on the 7th of June 2022 and the Licensing and Gambling Acts Subcommittee dated the 28th of June, the 11th of July and the 15th of August 2022. They are on pages 7 to 20 and are here for approval of accuracy. So could I please have a proposer and a seconder, please? I can see Councillor Crowley, you have your hand raised.
Yes, just to apologise, Chair, for non-attendance in the Licensing and Gambling Acts Committee that was before us. I was in a meeting that already overrun, and unfortunately, the meeting that you had was very sharp, and I missed it. So I do apologise. Thank you for that, Chair.
No, thank you for your apologies, and they have been noted. So thanks for that, Councillor Crowley. Can I have a proposer and a seconder for the accuracy of the minutes?
Yeah, Chair, I'll move all three if that's the best way forward. Thank you.
Brilliant, thanks, Councillor Paterson. Is anybody willing to second?
Second, Chair.
Great, Councillor Carpenter, thank you very much for that. Okay, so agenda item 6 are declarations of interest. So are there any declarations of interest?
I see no hands raised, Chair.
Thanks very much. Agenda item 7 is urgent items, and I have no urgent items. Agenda item 8 is the report of the Head of Legal Services, so a minor variation position on door supervisors. So for members, agenda item 8 is on pages 21 to 28 of the circulated agenda pack and is here for decision. So, Mr. Chappell, could you please introduce the report?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, agenda item 8, this is a report to seek approval for officers to determine minor variations in situations where the applicant is seeking to remove or amend the condition that relates to the Security Industry Authority, or SIA, door supervisors, which has been attached at a committee hearing. So members will be aware that there are two different types of variation process, the full variation and minor variation. Members will remember that this was gone through with them at members' training. However, I have included a summary of the processes in the report, which I won't go into detail in, but of course happy to answer any questions if members have questions on the processes at all. Members, since the pandemic, a number of industries have reported problems in recruiting a sufficient number of staff. This has been particularly so in the hospitality sector. One sector in particular that we've been concerned with is the door supervisor industry. So members will be aware that most alcohol licensed premises that operate late at night will have a condition attached to the license specifying that they require door supervisors between certain hours. This condition is usually either requested by the police and accepted by the applicant during the application process, or occasionally it'll come before members and members will actually impose a condition on the license. Just to be clear, officers already have delegated authority to issue minor variations where there are no objections. However, officers would not normally approve a minor variation when members have made the decision to impose the condition. We would usually suggest that applicants follow the full variation route to see if there are representations, and then it would come before members. However, given the difficulties being experienced by the trade in obtaining services, and consequently premises now being unable to fulfil the requirements of the conditions attached to their licence, we feel that it may be beneficial for officers to take these decisions going forward. So the minor variation application will be determined by officers, even if the conditions have been attached by members at the committee hearing. Obviously, this would only be done where consultation has been carried out with the responsible authorities and there are no objections to it. Members will note from the report that there is a letter of support from the police. They are moving towards door supervisor conditions which are risk assessed by the premises rather than rigidly imposed with conditions. It allows that much more flexibility. And therefore, we're bringing the report today with a recommendation, which is on page 22, that members support the proposal for officers to determine minor variation applications to remove or amend SIA registered door supervisor conditions attached to premises licenses and club premises certificates, and that officers only make such determinations where there are no representations in respect of the application from any of the responsible authorities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Chappell. Do we have any questions for Mr. Chappell in relation to the report? Councillor Paterson?
Sorry, Chair, seem to be occupying your time this morning. Yes, I'm concerned, Mr. Chappell. Members don't put these conditions on without a lot of thought because it does interfere. And while I was reading the report at home, and I would be grateful to my fellow members for their thoughts on this, it likens to me, well, we won't have MOTs anymore because there aren't sufficient garages. Now, we wouldn't do that. The risk still exists. And I have no problems with officers taking delegated positions. But if this did happen, members would not be aware that conditions were, unless you're going to, in some way, to tell members that their conditions have been removed. I'm thinking of certain hotspots where we do have problems, and I feel that certain proprietors, and you will know them better than me, may take advantage of this and say, well, look, we just simply can't afford it, or we can't find it, and use the label of we can't find it, meaning we don't want to do it. In which case, the decisions made by the committee members at the time to secure door staff at certain times, at certain hours, and in certain premises, to make sure the public are protected as much as possible, we wouldn't know if those conditions. How would we know if are you going to be coming back to members to tell us at any point? Sort of like they do in planning, there are delegated decisions at the back of a report sometimes, and to say, this is what we've done. Thank you.
Mr. Chappell, if you'd like to respond.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Okay, so I hadn't any intention of bringing a report back to members for decisions taken in the delegated authority. If we look at this from another perspective, if they apply for a minor variation and they ask to amend the door supervisor condition, so it's risk-based, and we take a decision today that officers aren't going to determine that. So I would have to refuse that application under my delegated authority. The applicant would then make a full variation application, and that would be advertised in accordance with the full variation process. Now, if there are no objections to that application from any of the responsible authorities, that application would never come before members anyway. It would simply go through in accordance with the legislation. So what we're trying to do is make it easier for an applicant, rather than do the full process, which is much more expensive and there's more consultation with an advert in the paper, to make it an easier process for them to change their conditions. Now, the whole issue about members obviously put in the conditions on for public safety, I'm fully on board with that, which is why the minor variation process consults with the police, who are the lead authority for these decisions anyway. So if the police come to us and say, well, we're happy for this premises to change their door supervisor condition to be risk assessed. We're not saying the door supervisor will go. What we're saying is that the premises will assess when they require door supervisors, rather than us saying you have to have them between 10 and 2 o'clock in the morning every night of the week, which sometimes may be overkill if they are just serving food at the premises. So if it's being supported by the police, who are, like I said, the lead authority, then I would say that we shouldn't have any issues. Obviously, if there are issues following the change of condition, then it would very quickly be brought back before members.
Would you like to come back, Councillor Paterson?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Right. So we're going to wait until there are actual problems, because the whole point of a condition is to preempt problems arising. We're acting on behalf of the public there to make sure that things. So it just sort of makes me think, why are we putting conditions on as a committee if then later down the road they can just say, well, I'm sorry, but I don't think this is viable, and come to you and you sort of say, no, okay, we don't have to have them.
Can I come back in there, Chair?
Yeah, if you'd like to respond to that.
Yeah. So when these conditions are attached to the license, they're attached usually, and I would say 99% of the time, because the police have requested the conditions be attached to the license. The police are changing their approach to door supervising conditions, which it specifies in Mr. Bailey's report. So what they're looking at now going forward is going to a risk-based assessment. So if you had a new premises license coming through, perhaps Mr. Bailey could correct me if I'm wrong here, a new premises coming through, the starting point for door supervisors will be for them to risk assess them themselves. Obviously, if the police feel that that isn't sufficient, then they will ask for a rigid condition to be attached to the license. So I don't think it's a case of members putting conditions on the license, which have been requested by the police. Members putting conditions on the license and us just removing them. It's always going to be with the permission of the responsible authorities. So we will consult with the police, and if the police say, well, actually, this premises we feel doesn't need this rigid condition on it, we're happy for it to be risk assessed, then that's the only time that I would take a decision to grant the license. Obviously, if the police came and said we're not happy with it, or indeed environmental health came and said they weren't happy with it, then it wouldn't proceed. We would always refuse that, and then they would object to a full application, which would be heard by the subcommittee.
Would you like to respond to that?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I can see where you're going, Neil. I can see where the representatives of the police, Nick Bailey, is going on this, but I do have reservations. I won't vote against this today, but I would just like to keep an eye on the situation. If you could just in some way let us know how many premises are actually, you don't have to name them, but how many premises are taking or making use of this, and just for us to keep an eye on it, because there are some areas, you know, where we've had members of the public pleading with us to do something, and we have acted. I just want to make sure that that stays safe. Sorry to labour the point. Okay, thank you.
No, thanks very much for that, Councillor Paterson. If we can go to Councillor Wayne Carpenter.
Thank you, Chair. I would support Councillor Paterson's concerns. My concern would be that this new agreement would create some sort of blanket without identifying the hotspots where there is trouble. And I'm sure that in conjunction with the police, if they can be looked at individually and identified as needing door staff, and others then that might not need it. But our concern is for the safety of the public as they use these premises. And I think that as long as each case is looked at individually rather than sort of a blanket coverage, I would be quite happy. Thank you.
Great. I know Mr. Chappell has referred to Nick Bailey, the police licensing officer, and I can see you've got your hand raised. So can we go to you then, Nick? Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps a little bit of explanation may assuage some of the concerns of the committee. Colleagues in Swansea who have initiated a change in policy have done so pragmatically. They've done so in response to an industry, the door staff industry, struggling to resource their existing contracts, let alone new contracts. But to give you some background, each application or decision that has so far been taken in Swansea has been taken on an individual basis. Prior to the decision being made, research is done on incidents that have happened at the premises, the type of incidents, whether that has been negated or minimalised by the presence of door staff, and whether or not that incident would have happened whether door staff were there or not. To date, there have been a number of applications that have been refused or that the police have objected to the removal of door staff because of a particular venue or a history of issues at a venue, mean that the removal of door staff would not ensure the safety of the public and those attending. I can reassure the committee that should this be adopted in Neath by Talbot, the approach I would take and any future successor of mine would be that each application is assessed individually. If there is a history of issues at the premises, we would be very reluctant to remove any requirement for door staff purely on a financial reason. But we are also very aware that a situation exists currently where premises are either going to have to stop licensable activities or be in breach of their license conditions because the companies that supply door staff are now in a position of strength where they can dictate to any operator, for example, that if they wish door staff, they will take them for 5 or 6 hours of the night, because otherwise it is not financially viable for the company to send out members of door staff, which means that any imposition the committee may have made, for example, for door staff between 10 and when a premises closes at 1, which is a 3-hour imposition, suddenly becomes a 5 or 6 hour imposition, not because it's required, but because it's dictated by the companies supplying the door staff. My position is that each individual premises will need to demonstrate to me that A, there is no history of problems at their venues, and that the safety of their customers will not diminish by the removal of the condition before I would be prepared to support it. I hope that reassures some of the members of the committee that this decision and the support for the proposition today is not given lightly, and it will be assessed as an ongoing process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for that, Mr. Bailey. Do any members have any further questions for either Mr. Chappell, or I'm happy if you've got any questions for Mr. Bailey as well. No hands raised. Okay. So I now refer member. Oh, what about the legal officer? Any questions from yourself? No. Okay, I now refer members to the recommendation on page 22. I know Mr. Chappell has read this out, but I will just confirm it says that members support the proposal for officers to determine minor variation applications to remove or amend the SIA registered door supervisor conditions attached to premises licenses and club premises certificates, that officers only make such determinations where there are no representations in respect of the application from any of the responsible authorities. So with that in mind, could I please have a proposer and a seconder to accept that recommendation?
Happy to propose, Chair.
I second, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Are there any members who don't agree with the recommendation and would like to vote against?
I see no hands raised, Chair, and I can confirm the recommendation is approved.
Great, thank you very much for that, Sarah, and thank you, members and officers. With that in mind, thanks to everyone. Diolch yn fawr I bawb for attending, and that concludes business for today.